So, if there's one thing that I particularly enjoy doing, or indeed most architects, besides drawing, it's reading. And for me, one of the best books in my collection is, in fact, the first book I ever got, really. And it's Rice's Architectural Primer by Matthew Rice. And for me, this was an 18th birthday present. And honestly, it's been one of the most enjoyable books that I've ever had. It's one of those books that I come back to from time to time. And I think what's most impressive about this book, more than anything, is if you're just a lay person or someone interested in architecture or someone heavily involved in architecture, this book will work for you. It's not oppressive in any way. It's quite a good start for anything if you've just got a general interest in architecture. And the way it sort of deals with how it sort of addresses vocabulary and things like that. It's with these kind of illustrations and the beautiful hand drawings. And within that, you've got these labels that highlight what each sort of element is. And I think with some things as well, as you go through, you kind of recognise them as things you'd see on the street or here and there. Like, for example, these kind of window surround details and what each element is. The way the book's structured is it's kind of done in historical order. So it starts off with medieval period and leads into modern. As well as that, there's other little features of it as well, such as materiality, key buildings, things like that, really. And if you're going off to study architecture yourself, those are kind of the key periods which get addressed in things like your architectural history course, which everyone ends up doing. It's key part one, and it kind of gives you the brief overview, and the way it kind of deals with things is the text part, that is. It is in these nice little written sections, and they're only a couple of pages long each, and within that they keep it concise but also keep it quite comprehensive. So within that, it deals with a lot of movements that happened in that period, and key architects that were around during that time as well. So it kind of gives you enough to understand what was going on in terms of context, but also gives you relevant information that you can go away and potentially research yourself if you really want to. And I think that's such a nice touch. And again, if you're going to study architecture, one of the first things that this book has in it is a nice little drawing in relation to, if I can just find it, bear with me, the architectural orders, which is the most important thing you're ever going to learn in architecture, and one of the first things you're going to learn. And also, someone like me who's really into traditional architecture, this was this is in the first few pages of the book, and this always kind of stood out to me before I went to university, and then when I actually learned more about the classical orders in my history lessons, as well as I chose to do a traditional classical drawing elective. That kind of illustration meant more to me over time, but it stuck with me from an early point. And like I say, the way it's just sort of dealt with throughout, it's just so beautifully done. And as things get more intricate as well, as you go through different periods and different styles, the illustrations grow within that. And like I say, just the way it deals with terminology, it's just such a nice way. Because like I say, you'd see things like this in the street, and understanding what's around you in such a manner like this, it's a nice way of dealing with it. So like I say, if you're coming at this not really knowing anything about architecture, just want to get an understanding, or even if you've got some bit of an understanding, it's a great starting point. It's a great, like I say, it's an architectural primer, and it does that role really well. And once you get to the back here, you've got these brilliant little segments on what key sort of architectural significant buildings are in different areas. And I think that is such a nice touch, the way those sort of counties are drawn. And then that leads into like what materials get in what part of the country. And again, if you're studying architecture, knowing something like that, it's going to be so crucial, because knowing where you're designing something and what materials are local, that's brilliant. And I think that's just so nice, really. And this bit here, this is my favourite bit of the book, and just that picture on the bonds. I think that is just fantastic, because I think if there's something that's ever underappreciated, it's different styles of bonds. People don't tend to think about it. I think the way that's kind of illustrated, it's great. And this book here, and then the way it ends. So, like I mentioned, each segment gives you some architectural names, and you can go and research it. Right at the end, names of architects and periods are active. So if there's kind of any sort of time period you've got an interest in, it'll give you the names of architects who are prominent around then. So it kind of covers a lot of bases, and it's not off-putting, it's not intensive. I think anyone could come at this book and anyone would enjoy it who did try it. So if I were to give it a rating, I'd definitely give it a 10 for those reasons. And also just how beautiful it is as well. The author, I think he's done another book on cathedrals, which I don't own yet, but I'm hoping to at some point. But if you happen to see this book, it's worth picking up. Definitely the best gift I ever got, and definitely one of the best books in my collection. It's something I come back to from time to time. And also, I remember at one of my previous workplaces, I got talking to one of the directors because I saw this book on his shelf, and we happened to both agree it was a really good book, and what it does and what's in it. It's a great read, and it's just a fun little book, really, more than anything else. So I'd really recommend going out and getting that.